Yet another edition of Blog Chat. It must be
Well,
Tuesday.
it must be Tuesday, but you're throwing my schedule off because I've been doing image reviews and I haven't done a blog chat since the very first one, I think.
That's right. So
Yeah.
welcome back to Blog Chat. Good to see you.
I guess that means I haven't done a blog post for a while.
Well, you know what? I mean, Chris and I just kind of had a crazy couple of weeks there. So
Yeah, Meteorama, right?
yeah.
All right.
So what else have you been doing? I mean, there's a couple other things going on right now.
Well, that sounds like a leading question.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're running a class right now, aren't you? Do you want me to be blunt?
I was going to say, you don't want me to talk about my personal life. You definitely don't want that.
I mean, sure,
Yeah.
whatever you want, man.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, we've had 3 out of 4 sessions of the first Lightroom Live course, and it's going great. Tim and I are doing that. We've done 2 sessions on the library module and the first session on the develop module. And then tomorrow night will be local adjustments and advanced development in Lightroom.
Fantastic.
So it's kind of a abbreviated version of our post-processing intensive. It's 8 hours of live Zoom instruction plus an hour of one-on-one time with with one or other of the instructors, as opposed to the full 40-hour plus immersion of post-processing intensive.
Amazing.
But
Amazing. I've heard all 5-star reviews so far too.
From what? From me and Tim?
No, the buzz, the chatter. Everybody's really happy is what I hear.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Well, it's going well. And
Awesome.
Tim did an awesome job transcribing his curriculum for this shorter format. So
Sweet.
So I have a feeling that there might be a few more sessions coming up shortly. Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe yes. Yes. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. You going to do one of those?
Yes. Oh, I'm eager. I'm ready. Yeah, I love this virtual stuff. You know, like I love in person too. Don't get me wrong, but I just like teaching. It's fun.
All right. I'll teach away.
Well, this is no. Today I am just a guide. I'm like, hey, follow me, folks. Lance did something cool. He wrote about the new Nikon D780, and boy, was it a mouthful. Yeah, off the top of your head, Lance. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah,
awesome.
For sure.
What's the first thing that jumps out at you? Why were you happy with the D780?
Well, this is going to draw some flack, I'm sure, but as a night photographer, it had the one feature that I've been waiting for like, what, 30 years. Shutter speeds that go past 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Although it only goes to 900 seconds, but geez, 3,600 seconds would have been better. So you have an hour, but no, it's actually for people like myself who are too lazy to pull out an intervalometer, too lazy or too stubborn or whatever. I've been using the time setting on my cameras for the last couple of years, and either just kind of, yeah, that seems like a good enough exposure, or timing it on my phone. Because you push the button once, it starts exposure. You push it a second time, it ends the exposure. But the D780 actually goes down to 15 minutes. And unlike on the Canon 5D Mark IV, which Canon introduced this thing called bulb timer, where you could go into the menu system and then scroll through a bunch of menus and thumb wheel and so forth and set an exposure that was longer than 30 seconds. On the D780, you just go into the menu once, you turn on extended exposures, and it sticks and it's there, and just the shutter speed dial just goes down to 15 minutes.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
That's yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's about freaking time.
It's true. It's true. So how long did you have the D780 in your hands?
I had it in my hands long enough to make more images than I did. But So it was probably 6 or 7 weeks.
Wonderful.
But unfortunately, in the time that I had it, the magic coalescence of clear skies and new moon didn't happen. So late winter, early spring in Vermont tends to be gray, 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 gray. So anyway, I didn't get to do any early Milky Way season stuff with it. I'll just have to buy one.
Well, we just want to quickly say thank you so much to B&H for loaning that to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Alex.
I could hear Lance crying from Vermont that he had to send it back.
It's true.
Maybe they'll send another one for Milky Way season. But it sounds like you're going to buy one anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
No.
Probably got to be a little while, but yeah.
No.
Yeah. And, that was the, it may seem like a small feature just to have those long shutter speeds, but for me, that was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. The native ISO does go up to 51,000, and I think that's good for forensics photographers, but not so much for actual
I mean, like this picture?
landscape shooters. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's just the image is just starting to break down at that point, and the color starts to bleed out from the contrast edges. But that's basically what happens on the D750 at 25,600.
Wow.
So you basically get an extra stop of usable ISO. So the biggest surprise of this camera, after you and Gabe being so ecstatic about the image quality with the Z6 for the last, however long it's been, and this camera having the same sensor, I was expecting a huge improvement in image quality over the 750. But at 6,400 and at 12,800, there's not that much difference. The image quality between the 750 and 780 are pretty good. So it's not anything against the 780. It's that the 750, even now, 6 years after its release, is a kick-ass camera.
That's amazing. And for those of you who are budget minded out there, 750s are really easy to find.
Yeah, new ones at B&H are $1,500 right now, and I've seen gray market ones on eBay, brand new, for $1,100.
Amazing.
Amazing. I'd pay the extra couple $100 and get a warranted one from a reputable dealer, but still, for $1,500 for one of the best full frame sensor 24 megapixel cameras ever made, geez.
Yep.
Yeah.
I used mine for 5 years until I needed those features that the Z6 had. So yeah, I still have it. It's my second. I guess I'm poly with my camera. So moving on.
So have you done any testing comparing your Z6 and 750?
I did back when I decided to move up.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that the quality, it seemed to me like the quality of the Z6 was incrementally better at high ISOs, if not substantially better in the conditions that I tested. So that was easy. At the time, there was another factor that really mattered to me, which is I also shoot video.
Right.
So for me to be able to shoot 4K video with an external recorder just like really tipped it over for me.
Yeah. Well, I do want to clarify one thing. So image quality at 6,400 and at 12,800 is pretty comparable between the 750 and the 780. But once you get up to 25,600, the 780 is still going to produce a usable image, and that's when the 750 starts to fall apart. And the dynamic range at 6,400 is, I think it's almost 3 stops higher on the 780. So that means that you've got, you know, a lot more, it's going to be a lot more forgiving
Gotcha.
in a well-controlled, well-lit environment. Like I was working with, you know, a quarter to a full moon plus light painting. There was no issue with dynamic range. But if you're working in a, you know, Milky Way conditions, or, you know, or some higher contrast scenario, those extra 3 stops of dynamic range on the 780 are really going to work. Yeah, that's going to be the payoff. I didn't really get to see it in the testing that I did,
Right.
but I think that's going to be the payoff down the road.
Right. Megapixels. Difference? Same
24,
megapixels, right?
24.
24,
Yeah,
24.
24, 24. It's, you know, Nikon hasn't come right out and said it, but it's widely reported that it's the same sensor in the Z6 and the 780. There was a little bit of a learning curve. One of the primary advantages or advances of the 780 over the 750 is the phase detect autofocus is on sensor, and that allows for live view focusing with face detect autofocus, the facial recognition, many more points and full frame coverage on live view autofocusing. So autofocus is greatly improved in the Z6, Z7, and 780. However, in the Z6, so what the on sensor means is that every 10 rows of pixels on the sensor, they're doing double duty. They are focus sensors as well as light receivers. And in the processing of those images on the Z6, there's a little bit of banding in the really deep shadows. Most of the time, you're not going to notice it, but if you are pulling up underexposed shadows on the Z6, you're going to see these very slight stripes going across the sensor.
Which we do in night photography.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But they managed to figure out how to fix that in the in the 780. Now, Nikon has been using face detect autofocus for a while, but this is the first time that it's on sensor in a DSLR. It was on the sensor on the Z6 and Z7. They worked out the kinks, and now it's a little bit better on the 780.
No, there was something else that you were really delighted about. It had to do with the memory cards, right?
Oh, right, yeah. Again, this is just a creature comfort, you know, user experience thing. One slot on the Z cameras and the XQD cards, you know, the SD cards are so inexpensive and they're so reliable, and it is really nice to have 2 of them. Whether it's for overflow or redundant recording in case one of them fails, it writes to both of them at the same time if you want to do that, or if one of them fills up, or if you're trespassing and the police or the security guard say, "All right, you're not supposed to be here. Give me your images." You know, you can.
But Lance, we don't do that.
You can hand them one of your cards, and you can
Nor
still
would
have
we
the other one.
recommend ever doing that.
No, we wouldn't recommend it.
Understood. Okay, good.
It might happen.
We're good citizens, and our viewers are good citizens. This would never happen.
It has.
How's the battery life?
I actually, you know what? Actually, you don't want me to talk about this. I'm going to clarify this and say that the only time a security guard has asked me to surrender my images, I had to rewind the film and take it out of the camera and hand it over to him. So
you look trustworthy. I just want to say,
I'm just saying it's been a while.
It's been a while. Also, you look trustworthy. So
right,
and maybe you don't do any. I mean, anyway. So
it's been a while. So battery life.
Battery life.
Yes.
You found that you liked the battery life? It was the same? What's the deal?
Well, it's rated considerably higher than battery life on the Z6. I think it's 320 shots for the Z6 and a lot more. Yeah, look at that. 2260 without live view or 360 with live view. I think it was 320 with live view on the, as if you had any other option on the Z.
Right.
So it's the same battery that is in the 780, the 810. I mean the 850, 810.
Uh-huh.
It's interchangeable with the Z6, Z7,
The
and the
L15B. Yeah, you
B,
have to
right,
use a B. Yep.
right. And those B batteries are actually backwards compatible with the 750, and they do give it a nice boost. As you can see there, I got 554 exposures shooting the Lyrid meteor
Nice.
shower on the 750. But I had turned off live view and playback there.
Gotcha. Okay.
So,
So we talked about the long exposure being built in,
oh,
right?
but let's talk about the implications of that, because not only can you do a single 15-minute exposure, but that means you can do in-camera image stacking. In other words, you don't need to set up an intervalometer if you're going to do long star trails. You can either use the internal intervalometer or the more limited but easier to use self timer, which you can set up for up to 9 continuous 15-minute frames. Or if you use the built-in intervalometer. Before, it was only good for time lapse because you could only do 30 seconds, but now
Is it better than the software that's been built into these cameras for that? Can you understand what it's trying to ask you to do?
well, I actually watched a YouTube video recently and figured out how to do it. Yeah, so it was fine.
So it's still that same like engineer built software and not photographer built software?
Yeah, and what it is, what's wonky about the internal intervalometer is that the interval includes the exposure plus the time in between the exposures. When you use an external intervalometer, the interval is the time in between the exposures, the built-in one. So say you're doing a
10-second exposure. Okay.
10-second exposure and a 10 seconds in between exposures, then you have to set the interval for 20 seconds. It's engineering.
It's logical in a different world. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a big benefit that you can do 9 of these long exposures with the built-in thing instead
Well,
of
no, that's 9. That's just the self timer.
9
So you don't have to
9.
9 times 15 minutes. So 2 hours
Yeah.
and 15 minutes.
Okay.
But if you want to do longer than that, or if you want to do, more than 9 shots, then you have to use the built-in intervalometer, which will allow you to shoot until the battery dies.
Klaus would
And
like us to post the link to the video that you watched. So
yeah, it is wonky, man. It is, Klaus. It is.
we will put Klaus will put that in the comments. We'll put it in the description of the video when the broadcast is done. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
and
to go
we'll email it to you too, buddy. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm just gonna interject for a second. I think that's cool and everything, but I mean, it's still okay. I haven't seen it, but it still sounds janky. I'm not gonna, but whatever.
It's one less thing you have to put batteries in. It's one less thing you have to not worry about losing or dropping or carrying or spending money on.
Fair enough.
Or plugging in.
I will move on.
Yeah. So of course it does have the same, if you do use an external intervalometer, it does have the same DC2 connector that the 750 has. And that's the little USB-like thing that you can't tell which way it goes because
you have to shine a light on it to see which side the tooth is on. The tooth always goes towards the photographer. You got it. Yeah.
Right. But it's a little tooth. It's a baby tooth.
It's the part that's not shiny. So you look for the not shiny side or anyway. So you made a nice picture while we were in Death Valley. Tell me about this. Oh, I clicked out of it. And out in Echo Canyon.
Yeah. Well, this was a layered scene. Moon was coming up, obviously, on the right there, and we all just kind of stopped and turned around and looked behind us as we're going in the other direction, just because of that, the layered little canyon there. And this was just kind of an example of the tonality and the dynamic range in the sensor.
I
So,
was standing right behind you taking a picture of you taking a picture. I should have been doing what you were doing. This is gorgeous.
thanks.
I love it. Wow. Oh, and those IRIX lenses. Gorgeous. So you talked about the autofocus being on sensor. Is there anything else that you notice about with the low light performance?
Well, it is, as you can see, it's rated down to -6 EV, which is, I found that autofocus ratings in general on just about every camera are overstated at, testing environment versus real world environment. So -6 EV is like a quarter moon. So I don't know, maybe if you have ideal contrast between your subject and background, you might be able to get away with it. But it definitely does. The autofocus is certainly superior to the 750. And we'll talk about this later, but the touchscreen is also works pretty well for focusing.
Okay.
So that's
Cool.
good. Yeah. Yeah. I, as somebody who doesn't do any kind of like sports or action wildlife photography, autofocus is not something that I do usually, but it is convenient in a scene like this to be able to shine a light on the dinosaur and then just touch focus on the screen, which works pretty nicely.
I've enjoyed that with the Z6 too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I turned it off because my nose kept focusing.
There you
So
go.
so you discovered some things about the live view too, didn't you?
Yeah, it's brighter. It's easier to focus in low light than the 750, and I used to be a Canon shooter, actually up until the 750, and what I felt were advantages to the Canon cameras were that the live view image was cleaner, and easier to focus in low light than in any Nikon camera that I'd ever used. The gain and the noise on the Nikon live view was just disproportionate to the gain and the noise in the images on the Nikon camera. So the Nikon cameras had better image quality, and the Canon cameras had better live view image quality. But now it's kind of reversed, and I don't know what they did in the engineering of the 5D Mark IV, but there's really no way to get a bright live view image in moonlight or starlight. Now, I could focus on stars with the 5D Mark II, no problem, and it's a challenge with the 750.
Hmm.
But one of the ways that we've worked around getting the brightest possible live view on Nikon cameras was to switch the live view from still mode to video mode,
Aha.
crank up the ISO all the way,
Mhm.
and crank the shutter speed down as low as it'll go. And a more recent discovery on that is if you go down to a lower resolution on the video, down to 1080,
Okay.
you can get a slower shutter speed and therefore get a little bit more image.
Interesting. Okay.
So that was been my workaround for live view focusing with the 750, and that seems to still be the way to get the brightest live view on the new cameras as well. But I did find in a low light situation, and I'm not quite sure how this works out, but in a low light situation, when I switched to video live view, it just defaulted to ISO 25,600.
Hmm.
without having auto ISO enabled, but for the live view.
Weird.
So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but that was really helpful because, so part of the reason for doing that is that in Nikon cameras, to get the brightest live view, you have to crank up the ISO and lower the shutter speed and make the widest aperture. It's exposure simulation. Some cameras have an exposure simulation setting that you can turn on or off. Most of the Nikon cameras don't, so you literally have to use maximum aperture and ISO and minimum shutter speed to get it. So
Gotcha.
if you use the video mode, you can leave those settings alone and not have to change your shooting settings. So you just flip back and forth.
That makes sense.
Yeah. The downside to that was that if you don't turn off the live view before you make your exposure, then your raw file is 16:9 instead of 2:3.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah.
Well, that is a nice aspect ratio
For video.
for video. Yeah, yeah.
The not quite panorama, not quite. Yeah.
Well, it looks good on TVs, right? So let's go to. You said that you liked how the back of the camera worked and the button placement, right?
Yeah. So what they did was you go back down to that other screen. Yeah. So on the left side of the camera, on the lower second from the bottom, formerly that was the ISO button, and it was a button that you access pretty frequently, and it wasn't the easiest one to find. So now it's right there on the top, which is where it is on the 810, the 850, the D5, D6, the Z6,
Z7.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's coming more in line. They also, but go back up there for just 1 second.
Sure.
Also notice what's just to the left of the ISO button.
Record button.
Video record button.
Yep.
So if you're a 750 shooter, while you're getting used to the location of the new ISO button, you're going to accidentally start recording video multiple times.
You could turn that off. You can
That's
designate
right.
what that button does.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things about the camera is that it is really customizable. There's a lot of user customization you can do with it. You'll also notice that the live view activation button has moved up from down below the toggle wheel, and now it's up there next to the viewfinder.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is a great place for it.
Yeah, and I will say this camera really feels great in the hand. It's so comfortable. It's so well balanced. The ergonomics are outstanding. This 750 has a great feel to it as well. But this camera, it just really is very, very comfortable to hold in the hand. And
is it the same size as the 750?
Believe it or not, it's actually a little smaller.
Get out.
Yeah, tiny bit smaller.
That was one of the reasons I chose the 750 over larger bodies. Multiple reasons, but like it fit in my bag better. I carry a lot of stuff, so it's nice that they made it even more compact. Not small, but just a little more compact. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's built like a tank. It's really well weather sealed. You don't have to worry about shooting out in the rain with it. So that's it's there are a few little things that distinguish it from a top of the line model like the D5 or D6.
Yeah, no pop-up flash. No, I'm kidding.
I think that's what distinguishes it from the APS-C models, right?
Oh, you caught me. Yeah.
Well, for one, I think the big thing is for us night shooters is the lack of the illuminated buttons on the back of the camera.
Right. I mean, that's everybody who's ever seen a D5, they're like, oh, I want that.
Yeah. That's on the 850 and the D500 also. But once if you learn the camera the way you should, then you memorize where the buttons are and you don't really need them.
It looks like the screen articulates.
Yeah, it's the same.
Oh, look at that.
It articulates in the same way as the 750 screen. So it's, only tilts up and down. So it's super useful for low angles and for if you're holding it over your head, shooting over a crowd. But in the vertical orientation, it doesn't turn out and flip around the way some other cameras do.
Right.
And I think that's a concession to make it more durable and more rugged. It's not gonna break off.
Right. And you're not
But
going to use this for vlogging.
well, probably some people might, but
Oh, you use a separate monitor for that, so you see your face.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
That I button is pretty handy too.
Yeah.
It's a customizable quick menu with 12 settings. You can program all 12 of them to be your frequently accessed settings. And it's what's kind of cool about it is that there's separate menus for still shooting with the optical viewfinder, still shooting with live view, and video shooting.
Nice.
So you can program, 3 different ways, which is very cool. And there's still also in the menu, there's the My menu where you can also program your frequently accessed things there. But it's quicker to use that I button right now.
No, I do like Nikon's menu logic. I've always been attracted to that. It makes sense to my brain.
Yeah, it was a relatively easy transition menu wise from Canon to Nikon. They're different, but yeah, it is pretty logical. It makes sense. But like with every camera, there's settings that you don't use very often, and some that you're never going to use at all.
Did you use the time lapse feature?
I did not, but one thing about it that is different is that the in-camera time lapse in the older cameras, if you chose that mode, you only got the video file. You lost your individual RAW files, but now you can use the internal intervalometer, shoot a time lapse, and still save it as a in-camera time lapse.
I checked to see if my Z6 does that, because that is revolutionary.
It's pretty cool for sure. I think I don't, as somebody who's not a time lapser, I don't really know how useful that would be. I would think that most people would still create their time lapses in post.
It's absolutely useful, because sometimes you want to drop your second camera and run a time lapse, right? Mm-hmm. If you are primarily a time lapser, you're going to shoot individual frames, right? But if you're doing many things at the same time, let's say like us at a workshop,
sure, BTS
we work with the 10Ds first, and sometimes we're lucky we get to drop our camera and do stuff with it. The first thing I do is shoot BTS, not make pictures. Like, I take pictures of people taking pictures. So for me, I had to choose the lady or the tiger. It was like, do I get a time lapse video and that's it? Or do I set up my intervalometer and go through the hassle of doing all that stuff? This is really attractive to me, that I can set it up and say, make both for me, and walk away.
Yeah.
I love it.
Cool. It is cool.
Yeah. You said that there's no option for a battery grip though?
Yep. And that seems to be drawing a lot of consternation and flack and what have you. I think the camera is small enough, light enough, comfortable enough to hold. I personally don't miss that vertical grip, but then again, like I said, I'm not shooting tennis or birds very often. So
yeah, there's a lot of other options. Yeah, I mean, some people like us night photographers use the battery grip as a second battery to take double the number of pictures too.
Right. Well,
and not necessarily vertical orientation.
Sure, but this battery has got pretty decent life.
Right.
If you're a night photographer, swapping batteries in the middle of a night out is no big deal. If you're doing a time lapse and you don't want it to conk out, but I think you get pretty good results if you turn off the live view. What was it rated, like 2,600, 2,200 shots or something? Without
that's a whole night, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going for NPF, maybe it's not, but okay, I get it. And there's always this case relay, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you can always plug in an external battery. So,
okay.
To me, that's not a big deal. And the lack of a pop-up flash, I probably use the pop-up flash on my 750 fewer times than I have fingers.
I think we can move on from the pop-up flash. I'm sorry I mentioned it. But there are some other things that you added to your wish list. You, all in all, you love the camera. Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And my wish list is creating a dream camera with the best features from all the different manufacturers. So I don't expect to see it anytime soon. They went to the trouble of finally putting exposure shutter speeds down to 15 minutes. It's a slightly odd implementation in that once you go beyond, I think it was 2 minutes, it doesn't go in third stop increments, but full stops. Something like that. It goes from 1 minute to whatever, a minute 20, a minute 40, then 2 minutes, then 4 minutes, 8 minutes, and 15 minutes. I don't know why they skipped the other stops. It's like the programmers got lazy or something.
Or maybe there's not enough bits on the memory chip or something. It could be a memory issue. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a programmer or an engineer.
Yeah, it would be great if it went down, a couple of stops longer to an hour, but whatever. 15 minutes is great. Again, I was a little bit surprised that the image quality at base ISO up through 12,800 was pretty comparable to the 5.5-year-old D750. Not disappointing, but it just surprised that it wasn't, it was a slightly better, but not a huge improvement. The big gain was at the higher ISO. It's a lot better, but still not something I'd want to be printing from. But I'd love to see, if we could have printable image quality from ISO 25,600, then I would say I'd jump in there and say, hey, yeah, let's use the NPF rule. Yeah, because right now, if you're going to use that NPF rule for super sharp stars,
say that 3 times fast.
Yeah, you say it. No, if you're going to use the NPF rule, which basically takes your longest usable shutter speed from like 25 seconds down to like 9 seconds, you're going to be shooting at a ridiculous ISO that compromises image quality anyway. So you have to weigh the difference between slightly moving stars or a lot of noise in your image.
Right.
So, the NPF rule is great, but it's hard to use it if it means that you have to shoot at, ISO 3 million.
Truth.
So, I don't know. We'll see what comes down the road, but certainly the image quality is right up there, and it's class leading or at the top of the class for 24 megapixel sensors.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So we talked about this before, the live view. To get the most out of live view in extreme low light situations, you still have to go into the video mode.
Oh my gosh, this one I totally agree with.
Yeah, because they give you this little rubber thing that attaches to the camera strap, and you take it off the camera strap and you put it over the optical viewfinder to prevent light from going in and causing flare on the back through the back optical viewfinder. And that little rubber thing gets lost in about 30 seconds.
Right.
And the high-end pro cameras, they've got the little switch on there that just flips like a curtain closed.
Remember that from my D700.
But like the backlit buttons, that's that's a top of the line feature. So.
Right. Yep. All right.
Yeah. Speaking of backlit buttons.
Speaking of backlit buttons, and then this dynamic range example just blew me away. I was talking to you about this before the live stream.
Yeah, it is a daytime image. That's sunlight there. Count Dracula survived, but yeah, and I just put this in there because I was really impressed with that as well. That you know,
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm not sure if we passed over this or not, but you know, one of the reasons the image quality is so good on here is that it's like a lot of the most recent cameras, is it's a dual gain sensor,
Right.
and you've got it's not 100%, but it is a largely ISO invariant camera. So you can get a couple of extra stops of dynamic range by underexposing 2, 3, 4 stops and pulling that up in to save your highlights and then pulling up the shadows in post.
For somebody who's never heard that phrase before, ISO invariant, just rewind for like 10 seconds and repeat that. And so we understand what that means.
Okay, so basically what it means is a completely ISO invariant camera. You could shoot an image at 100, or you could shoot the same aperture and shutter speed at 6400 and then raise the exposure 6 stops in post-processing, and the image would look identical. So pretty amazing. So you get underexposed by 6 stops, lift the exposure 6 stops in post-processing, and have the same result. Now, at base or native ISO of 100, you have a much wider dynamic range, 14.3 or 4 stops. When you get up to 6400, it goes down to like 10 stops.
Huh.
And on older cameras, it goes down to 6, 7, 8 stops. So if you are in a contrasty situation, a dynamic situation, oftentimes we will underexpose the image to preserve the highlights, keep the highlights from blowing out.
Mm.
And that means that your shadows are underexposed. And on a camera that is not ISO invariant, when you lift the exposure in post-processing, all kinds of noise comes pouring through the spaces in between the tonal range in the deep shadows. But when you have an ISO invariant camera, there's only a modest gain of noise in the deep shadows when you do that. So there is an example in the blog post that I've done. It's the orange chair image.
Yeah, click on that one, man. I'll
Geez.
just show it. There it is.
Okay. So this Lightroom screenshot next to it shows that the exposure slider was pushed over 3 stops. I didn't underexpose by 6, but 3 stops, and made adjustments to shadows, minor adjustments to whites and blacks. Pulled the highlights way down because I was holding detail in those windows.
Wow.
So by underexposing by 3 stops, I could hold lots of image detail with no sign of clipping whatsoever in those windows, and then lift it 3 stops and pull out detail without noise way back in the middle of the frame at the end of the shot. I wish you could blow that up, but yeah, so way back in there is it's nice and clean, and there's actually detail. So as well as to the right of the chair.
Amazing. Well, thanks for explaining ISO invariance. I know that's it's a big topic, and it's probably something we could spend more time on, but it's good to know the D780 is ISO invariant.
And the 750 is as well, and so it would be the 6. So it is extremely useful for urban artificial lighting night photography. So,
Oh,
okay.
So there was a handful of other things that you had on your wish list?
Yeah, a small handful. Yeah, so one of the other advantages to Canon cameras for night photography is the auto Lener, long exposure noise reduction. So rather than just automatically doubling the length of the exposure, which is basically a dark frame subtraction, Canon has this more complex algorithm where it evaluates the image and determines. They don't talk about how it's done. It's company secret, but it's not an automatic doubling of your exposure, disabling your camera for double the length of your time. So that's auto Lener. It's not quite as good as having Lener turned on to the on position, but it's a lot better than having nothing at all. And the other thing about that would be nice would be being able to shoot with letter enabled and continue shooting and then hold those images in the buffer until you stop shooting, and then it runs the noise reduction on all of them.
Mm.
Now that's something that's been in Canon cameras. I don't think it was the 5D Mark I, but since the 5D Mark II and all
Gotcha.
the 6, 7, and 5D cameras. And then, I'm going out on a limb here. This is something that they actually could do if they could develop it on their own without infringing on Ryko's copyright, because the Z cameras do have that internal stabilization. The 780 has lens-based vibration reduction or image stabilization, but the Z6 and 7 have internal body-based image stabilization, like the Pentax K1.
Mm.
And this is just such a brilliant feature. Pentax is really, I think, an innovative and quirky and funky company for what they did. So they have this feature called Astro Tracer that uses the stabilizer of the sensor. Basically, the sensor moves on a gyro to compensate for camera movement, the way the vibration reduction lenses do. But when you're not using that, when it's on a tripod, they have this thing that you pair it with GPS, align your camera with Polaris, presuming you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and then the sensor actually tracks with the Earth's rotation during your exposure.
Wow.
To allow you to get, to shoot long. You don't need the NPF rule. You don't need the 400 rule, the 500 rule, whatever. You can shoot up to a couple of minutes. And of course, what that means is normally when we're shooting with a camera fixed on the tripod, right? The foreground, the ground, everything on the ground is nice and sharp, but the sky is moving. So when you're using the Astro Tracer or a tracking mount, like the Move, Shoot, Move trackers that we just got to try out, the sky remains in place, but the ground is moving. So you have to shoot a second exposure for the foreground, which we often do anyway, right? Longer exposure, lower ISO.
Yep.
So
Nice shadows. Yeah.
We're not going to see that on the 780. Maybe we'll see it on Nikon mirrorless cameras if they are interested and can come up with it on their own. But
wait, what's that I hear? I think Nikon's on the line. They want to talk to you about the best night photography camera. They're working on it. I know. Excellent. They're calling it. After this, you got to go pick up the phone.
Cool. All right, JC, we're waiting for that call.
So there was a little bit more detail in between what we saw. We covered some of it there, and it had to do with ISO invariance, which we talked about, and dynamic range. I'd like to jump to your conclusions here. Okay. At the beginning, you gave it a thumbs up, but let's go into the details of the thumbs up here.
Okay. Well, I would say the image quality is great. It is at native ISO and up to about 12,800. It is similar to the D750, but with a bit more dynamic range, which gives you a little bit more leeway in contrasty situations. It does have one more stop of usable ISO than the 750. Mm-hmm. It's a 24 megapixel camera, so I actually like that. I don't feel the need for the resolution of a D850. I make prints up to 30 by 45 inches from the 24 megapixel sensor, and that's they look great. They look great. So if I were going to be shooting, making wall size murals, then yeah, maybe an 850 would be a better camera. But awesome. I think the image quality is outstanding. The build quality is outstanding. Ergonomics are great. Some people will miss the option for the battery grip. I don't think too many people are going to miss that pop-up flash that we're not talking about.
I have already regret bringing it up. I
But, one thing that we haven't talked about though is that, a lot of the debate in the, whatever camera gearhead world these days is the death of the DSLR and blah, 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 mirrorless versus DSLR. Well,
right.
um, I shot with the Z6 a few times before getting my hands on this one. And, I like the image quality, but it doesn't have the same ergonomics. It doesn't have the same feel in the hand. Why do I care? I work on a tripod anyway, but, um, it's a different user experience. And I guess I'm old school, and I like the format of the DSLR. The Sony camera has never had any appeal to me, partially because of the ergonomics and partially because of their convoluted menu system. But and the Pentax for the same reason. I've thought about getting that for the Astro Tracer a couple of times, but it's like it's like a tank. It's like a brick
Right.
with a lens on it, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't
Well,
it?
it's this is, you make a really good point, is that when it comes down to it, it's your hands that are using the camera. And if you're not comfortable with your hands in that camera, then it's the wrong camera.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm glad I didn't get a Z6. But I will certainly be picking up one of these. And who knows if they are going to continue to invest in DSLRs going forward. And if they don't, I'll probably buy a second one to keep in a shoebox for when the first one
Right.
dies. And
Right.
if that's the last camera I ever owned, then that would be okay. And you know what? I think I was thinking that the other day, and thinking back to film cameras. And when I bought I bought a new Hasselblad in 2000, a 500 CM in 2000.
You still have it?
You're not going to believe this. I sold it to finance a 5D, and I regretted it. I wished I'd just put that 5D on the credit card and kept the Hasselblad.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a camera that you can shoot with for the rest of your life. But
Yeah.
there's no advances in film technology whatsoever. But anyway, the point was, I think if the D780 is the last digital camera or DSLR I ever buy, that's fine. I don't really need anything else out of it. The wish list is mostly stuff that's not ever going to happen. So
it doesn't need to be smaller. It doesn't need to be lighter. It has nearly every feature that you want, except for that small handful of maybe 7 things that you want in a dream camera, right? Yeah, I'm with you, man. I feel you. I feel you. Now, you had some other specific recommendations for who the D780 is for. Do you mind if I share those?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So at the top of the list was D750 owners, right?
Right. So I've been shooting with the 750 since mid 2015. I passed on the 850 because I liked that camera, but I didn't feel I needed the extra resolution. The 750, it still holds its own in terms of image quality. It's still a great camera. It's an outstanding value to buy one new now for $1,500. They're not going to be around for long. So, if you're really on a budget, then that's a great camera. If you've been shooting with a 750, you will appreciate the step up to the 780.
Gotcha.
If you're using one of these older Nikon full frame cameras, yeah, it's definitely time to upgrade. And like I said, if you like that high resolution of the 810, then maybe get an 850 because that's going to be comparable resolution. It's what, 40 some megapixels as opposed to 25, 24.
Or consider the Z7 maybe. I mean,
Right. There you
yeah,
go. Yeah, the Z7, that's less expensive than the 850, right?
I believe it is. Yeah.
$600, I think, something like
Mm.
that. So yeah, Canon shooters, if you do a lot of high ISO Milky Way star point stuff, then but you've maybe not done so because the live view has been hard to focus in those scenarios. Now might be the time to switch. And if you are frustrated with the live view on the 5D Mark IV, and honestly, when the 5D Mark IV came out, I looked longingly at that camera because I missed a couple of features on the Canon camera. But when I saw the live view and that I couldn't get a bright enough image to focus, it's like, oh wow, they lost a little segment of their market. Those people who do what we do. So yeah, yeah, crop sensor camera guys. So it's like I said, it's a crazy outstanding value to pick up a 750 for $1,500 or a Z6 for $1,800, $2,300 for the 780. Yeah, I don't know. It's a big step up. If you do that, sell your kit lenses and your DX lenses with the with the crop sensor camera, because you're going to want good glass to make the most out of the resolution and the imaging quality on there.
Right.
So I put this in there just for Klaus because he bought a Z6 and then asked me a while ago, when he heard I was getting my hands on a 780, when I thought about it. So he missed that DSLR experience as well. And I said, if I had bought a Z6, I'd be in the same boat. I'd be unloading it to pick up one of these.
4 minutes ago in the chat, Klaus said, I fully agree with everything Lance said. And now he just said, LOL.
Hey, Klaus.
Hi, Klaus.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
pixel peeping.
Pixel peeping. So yeah, in the blog post, the DNG files for these images are at the very bottom of the blog post, and you can download them and check them out. Hopefully nobody's going to print them or God forbid print them and put their name on them and try to sell them. But
Yep. You can get them here. Yeah. And all in here. So if you click on that link, you'll be able to download the DNGs. So, yep.
Yeah. And then it's comparison between the Z6, the 750 and the 780.
Right. They don't look like this. They're the actually DNG files. Lance prepped these for the blog post, so they'd be side by side, juxtaposed, so you could see the differences.
Right. They're the individual full frame images. Then this is just a 100% crop. And you can see there's really not a whole lot of difference in image quality here at 6400. It's kind of hard to tell much difference at all. At 12.8, it's kind of the same thing. There's really not much difference. It's the 750 on the left, the Z6 the 780 in the middle,
there we
and
go.
the Z6 on the right.
Got it.
And the same when you go up to the next one there at 25, then you start to see, if you look at the dragon's tooth there, you can see the especially on the 750 on the left side, you can see the colors start to bleed out.
Look at that.
There's a little color like that rust color is bleeding into the sky. It stays nice and tight on the other two.
Yeah, interesting.
So these were shot in moonlight with a Luxley on a light stand there.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish I had Milky Way images to share, but just didn't get the opportunity.
Well, maybe the people who see this blog post will be kind enough to post their sample images on as a comment on the blog post.
There you go. That would actually be really useful to see, somebody else's comparative images between the 750 and a 780 at various ISOs.
And you can see the link to the blog post right down there in the description here on YouTube. open up the description. First thing you see there is the link to the blog post. We would love for you guys to come back and post images for us, or a link to your blog where we can see those images, or wherever you put them. And also, I just want to point one thing out. We work really hard at crafting this educational information for you guys free of charge. And all of the links in our blog posts, and when we post them on YouTube here, are affiliate links. If you did decide to buy something, please be kind. Click on our links and use that to make the purchase. It doesn't cost you anything else, but we get a tiny little sliver of it. And it helps us make more content for you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks indeed.
Otherwise, we're on Facebook too. You can also, that's another place where you can come share with us on our Facebook page. Lance, this is a banger of a post, man. How long did it take for you to put all this together?
Well,
it took 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, it took about 5 and a half weeks of procrastination, and I don't know what 20 some hours at the computer.
Wow.
Mostly it's procrastinitis.
Not procrastinitis, but still, it's like all of those nights of shooting, 5 weeks of procrastination, which is work too. Let's admit it. Procrastination is work. And
Right.
then 20 hours of writing. Thank you so much for putting this together. I learned a lot and I appreciate it. And I could tell from the chat room that there's a bunch of people here who are receiving it and are very happy. Cool. If anybody has a question, please leave it in the live chat or even in the comments on YouTube. We'll get the notification and we'll reply to you on YouTube if you're watching the replay.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Right now, all I see is thank yous and hellos and an agreement that there was somebody struggled with focus of the Z6 and Death Valley, and you helped with the workaround. So Martha, that was. Thanks, Martha. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Jen says thank you. And yeah, I think that's a wrap, man. You have anything you want to say?
Nobody wants to know what that is, huh?
I was going to ask, but you know, I thought it was personal.
It's a big rock. That's Callanish standing stones in the Isle of Lewis in the west of Scotland.
I was going to ask, are those dolmen or cromlech? But last time I did that, you corrected me. There's another name for these things.
Yeah, standing stones.
Standing stones. Wow. Well, okay, it's beautiful, beautiful print. Did you make it with the printer there?
No, that is. Oh, that's actually a C print mounted on die bond and laminated.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful, dude.
That's old school.
Are we doing a print exchange?
We are. There you go. Leading question. Yeah. So we've got
alumni thing.
For our workshop alumni. I believe the deadline was June 15th to be received. So if we've got any workshop alumni watching this, I don't think it's going to be that one, but I am participating in the alumni print swap, and so is Matt, and so is Gabe. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be assembling prints that are received and then mixing them all up and sending them back out again.
Yep.
So that's fun. And we'll, I don't know how many to expect, but we've opened that up to all workshop alumni, and yeah, it's fun. You know, we're, especially these days, we're spending so much time sitting in front of a computer looking at a screen.
Yeah.
You know, looking at a paper print has its values, and something that we should all do once in a while.
Yeah.
And put it on your wall. And it's you know, it's awesome to have other people whose work you admire and respect hanging on your wall in your home. It's just a different experience from looking at images passing by on your Apple TV. I don't know.
You know, I've got prints from you and Gabe, but I don't think I have prints from Chris or Tim yet. I got to work on that.
And notice they're the two that are not participating in the print exchange. So, not sure what that's all about.
Talk to them about that offline.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Lance.
So, thanks for taking us through the blog post, Matt, and thanks to the audience for for watching.
Yeah, we love you guys. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Stay safe.
Instagram Live tomorrow night,
Right.
and free image review open to all on YouTube, and Zoom on Thursday night.
Yeah, come back on Thursdays. Go to our channel here. Go click on our channel thing, National Parks at Night channel, and you'll see the upcoming live stream there. There's a link to submit images for the next image review there.
And who's talking tomorrow night on Instagram Live?
Oh, we have Gabe and a special guest, the inimitable and very tall JC Carey from Nikon.
Excellent.
Yep.
And image review. This is actually going to be the first week that I'm not doing the image review. Well,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I will miss your voice.
Oh. So it's is it Tim and Chris?
I believe so.
I think so too.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I know Martha's got a project for those guys. So.
Oh, great. Great. I want to say Hadley just dropped in and said, thanks, guys. Very helpful from somebody who shoots Sony. We love you, Hadley. Thanks, man.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks. We'll see you around.
Take care.